My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Kiran Sangran, Guru Kiran Neo, fellow Jnanis. Today I'm going to cover Mahan's 12th principle, which is an important, principle that determines whether somebody actually attains enlightenment or attains a good understanding of life or attains a peaceful and joyful journey. Depends very much on effort, what we put in. And I want to cover today on this 12th principle of effort. And it's this picture that I have in front here that shows somebody is climbing and is pushing a rock, right? And for many people, life seems really tough. There is this gravity in one hand, and then there is this thing called life. We've got to climb up to the summit, whatever that summit is, right? For some people, the summit is, having a good job. Others may be, having a good partner or, having a home, big home or cars. So whatever that summit is. And it seems that climbing the hill, the mountain itself is very difficult. But now you've got to carry, you can't walk alone. You're carrying a lot of burden, right? And that big rock is like all our worries and challenges and all those things that sometimes can overwhelm. That if the strength that we have is not strong enough to hold on to the rock, it will overwhelm you. Gravity will just pull you down all the way with the rock's force. In that same way, you can have, so if the force that you put is lower than the rock or the challenges that we have, it'll overwhelm you. It'll just go down, the gravity will pull it down and we'll be completely rolled over. But on the other hand, we put equal force to that rock, we are neither moving back nor moving in front, right? We still are unable to achieve what we want to achieve. And that's, for many people, the life is such that they say, my life is stagnant. Others will say, you know what, I'm rolled over. I just cannot hold on to things and it just rolls over. But then there are others who take small steps, one step at a time. And they slowly exert more force than the forces of that huge rock, the huge challenge. And they take one step at a time, slowly holding on to it, moving forward a little bit, moving forward a little bit, holding on, moving forward. So they have a strategy. They will not achieve everything one go, but they push forward, they stop, gain some more strength, push forward, stop, gain some more strength for the muscles, and as they keep pushing. So we know people, we know great people that have, done that, And then there are others that over time, they gain, as they were pushing forward, they build stronger muscles. And as they're pushing every day, the rock, becomes easier to push. And ultimately, they just are able to overwhelm that rock. And the rock just completely, their power is bigger than the rock, that they can move very quickly to get to that summit. So you have those who are overwhelmed by it, those who are stationary, those who make small steps, hold on, small steps, hold on, and those who are making that small steps and building the muscles, and over time, they're able to overwhelm all the challenges and ultimately reach that summit, whatever that summit is, right? And this is the principle that Mahan is going to talk about on how do we achieve the ultimate summit, the ultimate reality, the ultimate state of our own existence, the enlightenment, the I that he talks about. So this is the principle that theoretically, we may know this is where we want to go. This is the summit we want to achieve, right? But sometimes the gravity is too high, too big for us. The gravity of the materiality is too strong that we get distracted. So how do we overcome and overwhelm that gravity of materiality that if we don't manage it, it could, take us down. So how do we, use it as a force to attain enlightenment, right? So this is what Swamiji's teachings you'll see in this, that the 12th principle is about effort. How do we, what does effort really mean? And how do we put in that effort? And this is something that I've seen in many, many disciples, in many people who start the journey. They start out very well, and then after a while, complacency sets in, and then all kinds of excuses come in, and they say, well, I've got no time. And ultimately, you see that the rock just overwhelms them. So how do we stay, the course of our journey to achieve whatever the pinnacle that we want to get to? So what is effort? Effort is a determination to achieve something. So what does that mean? What do we mean by achieving that? So let's start off with, something that is very simple, right? We've seen the evolution of, existence itself. As a species, the odds were against us, right? We had bigger creatures that would eat us, that destroy us. We had microbes that cause all kinds of diseases. We didn't have vaccines nor any medicines, to protect us. Today, at least we have vaccines and so on. We had the climate conditions were really bad. Food was not abundant like today, right? So we see that survivability became very challenging for human beings, right? And we see that, the odds were against us. Nature, the creatures around it. But somehow that this Homo sapiens, the species that we belong to, had this push towards surviving. And it made its effort to survive. And we have seen the evolution that showed us that we had strategies, we developed strategies, right? And it was built, some of it was built, by nature itself. Some of it was by nurture. We nurtured it, right? And we formed tribes, we strategized, we had tactics to bring the big animals down. We used the fur for all kinds of, to protect us from winter. And we see that, and food. So over time, that effort to survive, became so intensive, as what Darwin says, Darwinian theory says that, it is not the fittest, but the most agile to change. So we continuously evolve and change, and that continuously changed our DNA, and that gave us a survivability, right? So that in itself, to survive in this world, we need to put in the effort. If we don't, the rock will overwhelm us, right? So the first part is actually, I've seen many people that, they give up. They say, no, cannot do it, and everything just overwhelms them. So we see that the effort to want to survive, want to exist, and not only doing that, but having a strategy in place. And I'll come back to what that is. But once we overcome the survivability, then it is meeting our needs, right? So now we have a little bit more flexibility to say, okay, now that we've got the basic survivability out of the way, now how do we meet our needs, our desires? Again, it requires effort, right? So, whatever, better food, better, homes, better, family, and so on. So that too needs effort, right? If you want better food and shelter and home, we need to put in the effort. It would not happen naturally. So again, effort is very important. I mean, it's a determined, objective, to achieve something that we want in life. The same thing for comfortable life. We can't say, well, we want to have a comfortable life and not do anything. So we need to get our education. We need to get a good job, at least our business that we create, something that we need to do to be able to achieve a comfortable life, right? Next one is that having comfortable life doesn't mean gives you sustainability, because the things around us change. Like how we see the climate changes, environment changes, new diseases come in. So we need to have a strategy to sustain ourselves, right? And our families. And that's why education, accumulation of wealth, savings, all those things are to give us better sustainability. It requires effort, it requires planning, it requires tactics, right? But sustainability covers this notion of existence itself, right? We need to be able to exist. So part of the sustainability is that, we may be here today, but we're not sure we're going to be around tomorrow. So how do we sustain ourselves? So we keep ourselves healthy, we do things that we're supposed to do. We ensure as a species we sustain. So what do? We give our next generation education, better way of life, and all those things. So for human species to sustain, it requires, or to exist, it requires a longer term strategy, but that requires effort. The same thing, sustainability of material assets too. You may have it today, but tomorrow things may change. So how do we have a strategy and effort to ensure our material, whether it's physical body or property, how do we sustain it? The third aspect is emotional. How do we ensure sustainability of our emotional state, our mind state? This is something that we many people don't invest in, right? They go with the emotions. How do we manage our emotions? How do we manage our mind? How do we ensure that our mind is robust and strong, that you throw it against the wall, it would not shatter like a porcelain? Our egos would not shatter like a porcelain. Hard outside, but when you throw it against the wall, it breaks. How do we make our mind and our ego like a rubber ball that when you throw it against the wall, it bounces back and come back to its original state? That's about sustainability. And this is what Swamiji's teachings are about. How do we make the effort to ensure our mind is robust and strong? The same thing about effort is that intellectual. Our knowledge continuously changes. So there are two types of knowledge. There are knowledge, what we call contemporary knowledge, which is continuously changing. How do we keep up to date to that knowledge? And there are eternal knowledge that are permanent. And how do we know both? And this is an area that many people neglect, right? They don't take the effort to know what is the eternal knowledge in all the scriptures and by great saints and attending the debates and discussions and so on. But also contemporary knowledge, a lot of the knowledge that we study in university and other places become out of date. How do we keep up to that? So again, sustainability also depends on how well our intellectual capability and capacity is agile and adaptable to the changes that are happening, right? Requires a fair bit of effort. Right? And the last one is actually peace and enlightened life. Even peace requires effort for us. And I'll come back to that, which I want to focus on, the peace and enlightened life. What kind of effort do we need to put in place to achieve a peaceful and enlightened life? Come to the peace. Well, we may be peaceful today, but tomorrow I am not sure. So how do I ensure that I attain that peaceful state and sustain it for the rest of my life? Similarly, enlightenment. Today I understand things, but tomorrow new things may happen. How do I keep up to date and to be continuously enlightened? Again, that requires effort. So, and interestingly, Swamiji puts this principle here that how do we continuously move forward, though slow, but we are making progress, right? So in all this, but survivability, meeting our needs, having a comfortable life, how do we attain sustainability, and ultimately, how do we attain a peaceful and an enlightened life? And this is the discussion that we're going to go deeper. So how do we attain a peaceful and enlightened life? Now, that's the last dot point there. But if we attain that, would we be able to survive? And what are we surviving against? The forces of karma, the forces of nature. Can we be transcendental to it? Now, by attaining peace and enlightened life, would it meet all our needs, our material needs and our desires and aspirations? Would we be able to attain a comfortable life, and can we sustain all those things? And if you see in all the satsangs that we covered, we see that the focus on the attainment of an enlightened life and a peaceful life would enable one to achieve all the other dot points that I spoke about. And that requires effort. So what are the effort that we need to put in place? And Swamiji and all the other greats, we need 8 important practices, and this requires a fair bit of effort. The first one, let me start off with, is I'm going to start off with meditation. The reason why I start off with meditation is that the effort is not from outside. The effort is to be able to know who we are, what our constructs that define our personalities. And that requires a fair bit of introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation, right? And that is really important because this effort doesn't come from, if it's induced from incentives from outside, it will not last. It has to be something inspiring you, something that comes from within that drives you. If the drive is not coming from inside, then it is hard to keep it sustaining if the thing is from outside. So this meditation is really important. One needs to allocate time for meditation, right? It rejuvenates the mind, it inspires the mind. The second important thing is that upon meditation, the training your, once you acquire the knowledge, training your senses, training your material mind, your ego to dovetail to this universal dimension. So you start off the day with meditation, and then you train your mind to, the mind is going to engage in this material world with many people, many things, many experiences. And that oneness that you get from meditation, you need to train your mind, your senses to be in that connected state. That requires a conscious effort. The third aspect is nature-centric, to be one with nature. Go out, spend some time in nature, go for a walk, and you see that you become one with nature. It's not just you, yourself, but the people around you, but nature itself. Because nature is part of us and we are part of nature, but most modern human beings are decoupled from it. So they don't get the full value of nature, and that requires a fair bit of effort, right? The other aspect is martial arts or exercise. Defend yourself. Every time you go for a walk, every time you do exercise, every time you pick up a martial arts or something, you actually protect yourself against, negativity, against illness, against, so do something that makes your body healthy, right? So if you're doing yoga or dance or, going for a walk, all this raises your white blood cells, gives you that ability to overcome, various challenges, including, things that make your body weak and the mind weak. Right? The other aspect, uplifting conversations, whenever you gravitate towards, things that are not so great, try to, be inspirational, positive, things that are difficult, learn to flip it from scars to stars. So when the thoughts are divine, the speech becomes divine. When the speech and the thoughts are divine, the action becomes divine. So we see that uplifting conversation every morning, write something positive, to yourself and the people around you, right? Don't use coarse words and harsh words, right? And I think that tells you the refinements of the human mind. The other one is nutrition. Try to eat healthy. I know in Malaysia it's a little bit difficult, but again, you got to get a balanced diet, vitamins to keep the body healthy. The other aspect is daily rituals. You've got to have consistency. You've got to have consistency, right? Your meditation, the way you eat, the various things that you do, what you read, there has to be consistency. When you have consistency, you see that you start getting the depth. And the last one is that you've got to be a seeker of knowledge, right? Challenge yourself, do things differently, do research, take some time to attend satsangs, take some time to attend great lectures, learn from people, and it's quite interesting. I got fascinated recently by the difference between Advaita teachings in the Hinduism and Buddhism, and really amazing discourse that I was going through this morning, the last few days, and I learned many new things, right? And so, take some time to build your knowledge base. It requires effort, right? So all this requires effort to be able to, in the first instance, not allow the rock to overwhelm you. At least you're holding a position. If you may not be moving forward by holding the position in a stationary, to give you time to take a breath and rejuvenate yourself and take a step. And slowly, step by step, you see that as your meditation intensify, as your trainings become more sharper, as you become more nature-centric, as you build your body, you have new techniques and tactics that you are able to learn. As you become more inspirational, sometimes you have to inspire yourself. I can do it. Yes. You motivate yourself and the people around you. And sometimes when you motivate yourself and people see you inspirational, they will come and push the rock for you. And one of the biggest person that will call the biggest supporter will be the guru himself, who give you inspirations, give you ideas, and maybe even hold the rock for you until you take a breather and say, okay, now let's push it together, right? And that's what the gurus do. That's what the masters do. That's what the teachers do. They will, suddenly you see that there are others that are holding the rock for you and pushing you, right? You see that, taking the time to get the nutrition and the strength and to push, you deepen your strategy, through that concentrated consistency, and ultimately you learn new knowledge to be able to overwhelm the big rock. The rock becomes like a feather, and the rock becomes, from pressure to treasures, and challenges become, a foundation for new learning. So we see this happening, and this is what the effort is. Sometimes I see that disciples get their initiation, or people, start out really well and they fizzle out. And after many years, they say, oh, I've not made much progress. And some come back and say, look, I'm overwhelmed by everything. So again, I hope that you continuously push this. But we also see something very interesting happening. When we do that, our whole mental, intellectual DNA starts changing. And we see that our language, the vocabulary that starts building up in our mind starts expanding. We see that things, the positive words that come in, openness, peace, you become playful, happy, joking, you see, have the zeal for life, we have the enthusiasm, the gratitude, grace. So the vocabulary changes because the mind now starts transforming and reforming. And when the mind starts doing that, you see your blood chemistry starts changing. You become more healthy, more alert, you have greater clarity, your memory bank expands, we start seeing new creative ideas comes in, we build new language, new vocabulary, new way of communicating. And you see that, we start pushing the rock starts moving much more faster. And this is what we start seeing. We become more happy, right? And you see that what constitutes happiness is quite interesting, right? So you see that all the resentments drops off, all the suspicion and resentment disappears, all the grudges disappears, we see that we stop living in the past, we say, okay, let's move forward. It's okay. We made mistakes, let's move on, right? You stop wasting, time and energy and fighting over small frivolous things, you become involved in things, you're involved in people's life. You want to make a difference, not only for yourself and your family, for others. So this is the altruism that starts showing. You become oneness, you become more universal in your outlook, right? And we start seeing that you stop, things may happen, negative things, but you stop indulging in self-pity and, oh, I cannot do it, or I am not so good. All that disappears, right? No, I don't have time for it, and I cannot find time for myself. All that disappears, right? And you start cultivating, virtues. I said the GP Mahan values, right? Gratitude, patience, mastery, awareness, humility, agility, and the nobility. Right? We start cultivating virtues that are more, makes our mind more expanded, our intellect more deeper, and we have a love and passion for life, and we have this humor. And the other important part is that we don't expect too much from ourselves. We don't push ourselves. We say, look, it happens naturally. If it happens, it happens, and you are not, sometimes people say that I'm in a rat race, right? You've probably would have heard the term rat race, right? We are neither a rat nor are we in a race, right? So, and this is something that we learn. We go with our pace. We are not competing with anybody. We are only slowly pushing the rock to make ourselves better, make ourselves stronger, make ourselves more agile, more resilient, more peaceful, and more enlightened, right? And ultimately, you attain the last one, that there is something far greater than our own biology. And when that happens, the rock disappears, the mountain disappears, and you are in the pinnacle, right? And this is what happens as we progress. But that requires, so all this ultimately leads us to our own spiritual compass, right? The compass that we understand what religious teachings are and bhakti is, whatever the scriptures and the masters teaches about God, becomes more clearer. We realize that, what starts off as duality, God and me are separate, through the pursuit of scientific truth and also rational thinking. So we have to put in that effort. This satsang is to expose you to that and for you to pursue that. And when you take that spiritual journey, you see that there's a point where both the bhakti and the spiritual path converges, anchored by both an evidence, experiential experience of that rational truth. And we see that when that convergence happens, we discover our spiritual compass that gives us that direction. And that's the point. We see that there is no mountain to climb. There is no great challenges that we carry with us. We are universal and we are everywhere. And we see that, the center starts and ends with us. So whatever we think as a summit or the problem was just an illusion. It just disappears, right? And this is the effort that we need to make, the effort of allocating time for ourselves to discover that truth, effort to once we discover that, percolate in every facet of our lives, and slowly we start seeing that, our mind, our intellect, and our understanding of reality starts changing. So this is the effort that we need to take. And I'm going to stop here. I would, happy to take any questions that you have. And next week, I'll show you some examples of how we can put in the efforts to transform scars or challenges into new learning or, stars, and how we can use the various parts of the spiritual compass to help us transition, overcome issues of fatigue, laziness, anger, all those different qualities as foundation for our enlightened life. And that requires a fair bit of effort, what we need to do to achieve that. And ultimately, how do we become from an unillumined state to an illumined state? That requires effort. But I say that as we put in more and more effort, every day it becomes easier. And then one fine day, the mountain disappears, the big rock disappears, and all you have is you're standing in this universal reality. Solution.